as long as you have your health, your family, and God, like that's all that really matters
Wow.
in this life. I think that was the perspective shift for me this time. And then like being postpartum now too, I'm like, this is what matters the
Yeah.
most. And being able to be so close to like God, I think when you are pregnant is like, it feels like you're the close, like, and giving birth feels like you're like the closest in the thin veil of like life bringing babies into this world.
Welcome to the Happy Home Birth Podcast, your source for positive natural childbirth stories and your community of support, education, and encouragement in all things home birth and motherhood. Is it possible to hold space for both joy and grief simultaneously? Hey there, happy home birthers, and welcome to this week's episode of the Happy Home Birth Podcast. I'm your host, Caitlin Fusco, and this week we're speaking with Ivana Burbage. Ivana is a mom, wife, and photographer from San Diego, but now lives in Hawaii with her husband, Justin. She loves being creative, surfing, spending time in the ocean, and since having her babies, is passionate about birth and motherhood. And as Ivana's story unfolds, you will certainly notice the mingling of both joy and pain throughout and between her two pregnancy and birthing experiences. And isn't this such a picture of the reality of our lives? We don't always have perfectly separated, segmented experiences of extreme elation or depthy grief. Oftentimes, our lives unfold in a way where both must share space and coexist. I am so grateful to Ivana and her family for sharing this reality, both the pain and the beauty. Okay, let's get started. Please remember that the opinions of my guests may not necessarily reflect my own and vice versa. And the show is not medical advice, it's an educational tool. So continue to take empowered responsibility for your health and your family. Ivana, thank you so much for coming on the Happy Home Birth podcast.
I'm so excited to be here. I've always listened to your podcast through both of my pregnancies, and it's the only thing I tell people I listen to during both of them. I don't read any books or put myself in any other way besides positive stories. So,
That is an honor. And I humbly accept. I'm so grateful and so grateful to be able to play a small role in this journey that you're about to share with us. You have got some amazing aspects for us to cover today. Before we jump into those, would you mind taking just a moment to introduce yourself and your family to the listeners?
yeah, kind of broadly, I'm Ivana. I'm a mom of two now, 2 weeks postpartum. I'm a photographer, is my normal job. But I think after having kids, I really stepped into the role of just wanting to be a homemaker and be really present with my kids while they are so little. And we grow our family. We live in Hawaii. My husband is born and raised here. So when we got married, we just knew this is where we wanted to have kids because all his family's out here and his family is way bigger than mine. So we just wanted to be with our village of people. We have an amazing community here. And yeah, I just love being a mom. And that's my passion.
Mm. Oh, darn. That is so sad for you to have to live out in the sun and sand and salt water. That sounds really rough. That's amazing.
One has to do it.
Oh, that is so awesome. Okay, so you mentioned your husband, Justin. So I'd love to hear where you both were coming from when you became pregnant for the first time. What were both of your perspectives of birth and what that would look like?
I kind of always, like when I think about it, I always kind of knew I wanted to do a home birth. I wasn't really aware of like the healthcare system in Hawaii because I am from California. So I was comfortable with like I knew what hospitals or birthing centers there. Hawaii doesn't really have birthing centers like they do on the mainland. Like they don't have really nice areas with like a pool that you could go to, which is kind of is something I thought I might do for my first if I was there. But here, just in our church community, that's how I ended up finding my midwife. I did go to an OB for like the first two appointments, and I just kind of felt like this wasn't it, but I was just doing because my insurance covered the blood tests and everything else. And I found my midwife through just like discussing with people, and that kind of just fully made me like 100% like I am going with my midwife. And my husband never, he kind of was like, whatever you want is what we're gonna do. We're also, I don't like the term like crunchy granola, but like he is also very much on that bandwagon with me. And we've just always stayed like as clean. Already we're like pretty homeopathic because my stepdad was a naturopathic doctor. So he kind of like gave my husband some like nuggets when we first started dating, like as far as like just taking certain vitamins and just being clean. So my husband never had any like doubts. We just kind of fully like went for it. He was on the phone call with my midwife the first time we interviewed her to see if she was going to be the one. And we literally didn't call any other midwife. It was her. And we were just so excited. I think we talked for like an hour and a half. My husband was so excited from then on. So he was really educated on his own. So we were both excited. He's wanted to be a dad since he was like 10 years old. So he was just so excited. We were not planning on getting pregnant until like the end of that year, but God had other plans, and it was perfect. And we were just so excited.
Wow. Okay, so you guys found out about this midwife through somebody at your church. Before that, were you just thinking like, "Oh, well, we'll just do like traditional OB care," or were you already kind of like trying to figure it out?
Yeah, I was just like, I don't know where you find midwives. Do you just go on Google and look them up? Which is probably what I would have done, I think. But I had a really good friend just tell me like her birth story kind of like really nonchalantly. And then I think my midwife was actually her midwife's backup. So my midwife was the one that showed up because her midwife couldn't make it. And they were like, we actually loved our midwife because she was Christian as well. And they were like, she was praying with us and singing worship music. And they were like, her whole, like, when she walked into our house and we had never met her, it was the best experience. So it's like, okay, that I think, like, I'm willing to call her and just see how I feel. Cause at this point, the two OB appointments I had were just very unpleasant.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah. Wow, that says a lot about a person for them to be able to walk into someone's house, never having met them, and the people that are there are like, wow, this was amazing. We wouldn't have wanted it any other way. This was a wonderful person to have at our birth. That's really impressive.
yeah, and she is the best. She's like our, I feel like she's my second mom.
That is really special. Okay, so I would love to hear more about that relationship and your first pregnancy in general. What were you doing in that pregnancy in terms of health, wellness? I know that you guys said that you were already very conscious of clean choices. So, what did that look like for you in that first pregnancy?
I was vegetarian for like 13 years, vegan for like half of that. And that was from like eighth grade until, yeah, 2 years ago almost. Justin thankfully stayed by my side through all of that because now I'm like, oh my gosh, I don't even remember what it was like to kind of have more of a diet in that way. Um, So that was mainly because my dad had very gnarly health issues before he passed. And I kind of took it upon myself when I was in high school. He went on like a raw vegan diet. And I was like, I'll move in with you and help you cook to like reverse this. It was like kidney issues. He was almost going to go on dialysis and stuff like that. So we completely, with that diet, positively it completely reversed everything for him. So I kind of like stuck on that because I was like, it worked for my dad, and I wanted to encourage him to be healthier. But then when I got pregnant and with my stepdad at the time, he was very into just like clean eating too. He was the kind of person that was like, from day one, red raspberry leaf tea if you're going to do anything. And he was like, I was like, well, you've never had a kid. Like, are you sure? But I think going into it, I was like, I'm going to be vegan. Like Justin and I was like, I'm going to raise my kids being this way. And Justin always told me, okay, we'll see when we get there. He never ever like tried to discuss it because he's like, we'll see. I think he always said never say never. So during my pregnancy with Rava, I just craved cheese like insane after the first trimester. And that was super interesting to crave something you haven't eaten in like, I don't know, it'd probably been like 6 years since I'd had dairy products. So I got a block of like manchego cheese from Costco, and I think I ate the whole thing in like a matter of like 2 days. And to this day, my daughter like loves cheese. Like she'll just snack on cheese sticks. And yeah, that was an interesting difference in both of the pregnancies from this one so recently, even the size difference of the babies. Um, but health wise, I think after that, I started more intuitively eating and really enjoying not having a specific diet and listening to like, okay, if my midwife is going to suggest certain things, even more homeopathically with my acupuncturist in between my pregnancies, some of the Chinese herbs had stuff like deer antler in it. She's like, I hope you're not vegetarian or anything, because this is going to really help like warm your womb and heal your body. So I was like, I'll eat anything as long as I intuitively feel like this is right for me. So I think that was a really big shift in both of the pregnancies. Not that either of them were unhealthy ever, because that's always been super, super important to me. And we've always just had kind of non toxic living before it became more popular to nourish your body by what feels best for you and to not be like, oh, you have to be vegan or stick to a certain thing was really freeing the second pregnancy. And just in between too, like breastfeeding and being like, I should eat more so and so to help my milk come in even more. So yeah,
Wow. It's funny. Before you even said the word freeing, I was like, that sounds very freeing to be able to just kind of, oof, let it go and to follow what your intuition is telling you. And wow, doesn't that make so much sense? This idea of, you become a mother, you become connected really deeply to this maternal intuition. And then all of a sudden it's like, like I feel like maybe I should start including this in my diet and maybe I should include that and this and that. And it's like, oh, I wonder if there's a connection there.
totally. The mother's intuition of like, I mean, part of me even feel, I told my husband, I was like, dang, like your first kid kind of gets like your trial error of you being like, okay, I'm figuring it out. And like if I weighed both of the pregnancies, my pregnancy this time around was so much more like energetic. And I don't know if it's maybe because I like knew what pregnancy entailed like fully, but I think health wise and being really knowledgeable about it and like not having to feel like you're restricted by anything was and is the best.
Mhm. Oh boy, that is such a good point. And, as someone who now my oldest is 8.5, I am so with you. Like, oh boy, that first child, like, it's such a beautiful and sweet relationship. And they do take a decent brunt of the figuring it out and learning to be a mother. And it doesn't stop when it's like, oh, they're two. Now I've got it figured out. No, it's every new leap that they take, you're taking a new leap as a mother and you're navigating it together. And so I have so much respect for my older daughter and try to really praise her a lot for like, thank you. Thank you for figuring this out with me.
Like we're doing this together.
Exactly. This is major teamwork. So, okay, that pregnancy, that first pregnancy, you're growing, you're learning, you're working with your midwife. Were there any big things that happened throughout that pregnancy that are really noteworthy?
Oh my gosh, so much happened in the beginning of that pregnancy. Wow. So my in the beginning of that pregnancy, I think like 2 days after I found out I was pregnant is when my dad passed away. He was not there. He was sedated already. So we got to tell him before he passed away that he was going to be a grandpa. And it was like this because it was in the beginning, I think it was hard to go through grieving because I was so scared like maybe I'll miscarry from being so extremely sad of losing a parent, but also obviously having the secure foundation in like knowing he's at peace, he's in heaven, and like kind of having that like guardian angel aspect going into it. I was like, I now, like during the whole pregnancy, got to just like be really like internalized with my emotions. And I feel like that in tuneness, I felt even more and like very protective over that pregnancy because I was very cautious of like, oh, okay, I don't want these emotions to affect me negatively. So I like very well took care of myself in the grieving process, which was awesome having a midwife that was just like, I think when people are choosing midwives, the knowing them before you like choose to go with them is so important because they are going to go through like enormous changes with you, especially for your first. And I think explaining to her, like, I don't know how to go through the grieving process while pregnant. And because she's obviously a believer too, it was just so amazing to have that like reassurance from her on days where I found myself being like overwhelmed. And even I looked into, okay, during labor, I was aware like emotions can come stirred up, and I wanted to be joyful during my labor and birth. So we like really discussed into like, how can I not let overwhelming sadness emotions come over this, and more like praying through the whole pregnancy that like God was going to show me ways that my dad was like there with me, or praying very like intentionally about the birth. And that was something like I got to do with my midwife as well, which was, and it was very rare, but it was also very like something I knew I wanted because that was so early on in the pregnancy. So that was just a super big note, was I'm just so
Mm.
thankful we got to have that choice of a midwife, being like spiritually aligned, like health wise, like she's so aligned on everything with us, to where that pregnancy and birth experience was so like everything I prayed for ended up happening, and I got to have a very peaceful, happy birth. And looking back into all the little things that were just like so perfectly detailed, even in my labor, that I was like, oh my gosh, can't believe that happened. My midwife had to like tell me some of the things. She's like, did you know, like you always listen to this song, and she ended up being born to the song like I always sang, when I was like grieving with my dad. Um, yeah, so that was, I think, a huge noteworthy part of my first pregnancy.
Wow. Yeah, I would say so. Wow, Ivana, that is just so hard. I mean, that is what a painful and difficult and bittersweet scenario where you are ushering in new life and ushering out a life that was so important and transformative to you for your entire life. That is to be holding those things at the same time. That had to have been such a difficult journey.
I think it was because I'd never been through loss before, except for like an animal or knowing a friend of a friend who like had passed away. My husband has been through a lot of loss, so he was just amazing to have in that time as a support. Um, but yeah, looking back into it, I just, especially the mountains by our house, I always like look up to them, and I'm like, I just like know my dad's like sitting up there in heaven, like looking down. Like he always joked that people would always be like, oh, you didn't ever get like a son. So my sister and I are like the only ones to carry on the name. He's like, I only cared about having like daughters. And he's like, my daughters are the best. And I just think it's amazing. Now I have two daughters. We don't have a boy yet. And just that he's looking down and like so happy to have that. And our family's growing. And yeah, there's like that unknowing peace that just God gives
Mhm.
you through like grief and loss. That was really cool to learn during pregnancy and
Wow.
be the person to bring life into the world.
Mhm. Wow, what a beautiful outlook that really is. And it is just that idea of like we grieve differently when we have that comfort and trust of I know where this person is. I
Mhm.
know that he is happy and whole, and that excitement of reunification one day. And until then, I get to grow my family here and impart on them the same beautiful love that he clearly imparted on you and your sister, and just the joy of being able to raise you. Wow.
Yeah. And then the reflection of like, wow, like your parents hold such, like, for me becoming a parent, I was like, wow, when you lose a parent, you kind of like reflect on like everything they did for you that you might not realize. Even now, Rava being like a toddler and doing, I like just remember things I like did with my dad. I'm like, wow, that's so cool to like someday when I pass, like my impact is going to be like that strong. And really, that your kids are like the biggest legacy that you can have. So, really cool perspective to learn.
Wow, what a big transition to make at the very beginning of pregnancy. And so then as we move later on into your pregnancy, how did that unfold? And then when we get closer to labor beginning, what was that like?
The rest of my pregnancy, I'd say, was, yeah, it was super enjoyable. I loved like now doing it like a second time. You're not as aware the first time. I was like I didn't know what Braxton Hicks were until my midwife was like, "Oh, you're having one right now." I was like, "Oh my gosh, cool." It was just very enjoyable. I stayed super active. I like wake surfed, wakeboarded a few times. You know, I was being really safe. We surf a lot and just spent a lot of time outdoors just with Justin because I was like, this is going to be our last time. Just you're only married for a little bit as just husband and wife before you become parents for the rest of your life. And all those stages seem like really felt like from boyfriend and girlfriend to fiance to like husband and wife. Like maybe they were like 6 to 8 months only, and then your parents forever. So that whole pregnancy, I think my pregnancy was just so enjoyable. And it being through summer, it was so fun to like travel and still be like healthy and the same as normal. I never let myself be like, oh, I'm pregnant. So blank as an excuse, or like I can eat unhealthy or things like that. And up until labor, I mean, at the very end, I had a friend come up to me and she's like, so tell me how you really feel. And I was like, I'm not like over it, but like I'm ready. And she ended up coming, I think she was born at 39 and 4. So I was like a little bit earlier. And I had no idea what to expect. It was kind of like I felt like I was a ticking time bomb waiting, like it could happen at any time. And I was like, I don't want to like go anywhere too far because what if it happens? And we discussed with my midwife. My mom gave birth to my sister and I both in an hour and a half. So she was like, it is sometimes genetic. Like a lot of things pregnancy wise are genetic, but then like you can be the outlier and it could totally not fall on you. What I have learned now doing it twice, that it is completely genetic, at least for me and my sister. So we've like solidified that. So she was like, you may give birth decently quick. Like it can last, like, I've had friends have 50-hour labors, 48 hours, like 20. So she's like, it could be long, but it also could be short. So it's just like, don't go anywhere super far away. I mean, we are on an island. So like the furthest place away is like maybe 45 minutes or an hour. But I was like, just in case, if my mom gave birth in an hour and a half, like things might move fast. So that was kind of just it leading up to having her. I don't think I overstressed too much. I did a lot of chiropractic work, which is something from your podcast. I was like, okay, I already went to the chiropractor, but I was like, this is my excuse to go every single week during my third trimester. I only go to people my midwife suggests. I did some acupuncture, but I wasn't super into it at that point in my life. I'm really into it now. But chiropractics was just like, I felt very secure every week in the end, being like, okay, I'm aligned. So if this baby comes, everything's in line. So much so to where this pregnancy too, I was like, God, just like let me go to my appointment on Tuesday so that, and then I can give birth on what, like Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Like I just want everything to be perfectly aligned so that she can come out the best way possible. Yeah, I think chiropractics is like the only thing I like really, really stressed on during that pregnancy and my second one as well.
Wow. That is really awesome. Like I love a good adjustments. That is music to my ears. Okay, so seeing your midwife, seeing your chiropractor consistently, and then we're leading up to your birth. So you already kind of hinted, okay, maybe it is a little genetic. So how did that actually unfold?
So her birth, I gave birth in like October, beginning of October. This time around, I think, so she was born on a Tuesday. Like that Friday before, I started noticing like a little bit of my mucus plug. And I was very into like, I need to take pictures of everything and send it to my midwife. I was like, hey, like, here's a picture of my, what's in my toilet. What is this? She's like, that's your mucus plug. Like, it just means your body's getting ready. At that time, like I said, I wasn't aware of Braxton Hicks or anything. They didn't ever like phase me enough, which every contraction you have outside of your labor is one that you won't have in labor, which someone told me. And I was like, oh, amazing. I just wasn't aware of them. And then still taking my midwife's birthing classes that she did every Monday. And that night we were on our last one that was like about postpartum and everything. And we were sitting down and it was like at 7 p.m. And I think Justin was like dozing in and out of sleep because we were really tired from that day. And then like I just had to go to the bathroom and I kept having to put a pad in and change. And Justin like got up. He's like, you have gone to the bathroom 3 times. Like, what? Did your water break? And I am an in denier laborer at this point. So I was like, no, no, no. It's just probably discharge. It's nothing. But I'm like soaking through pads. So I didn't think anything about it. We went through the class, but then Justin's like, just text them. So like we were looking at them like on a screen and see everything. And my midwife, she has like her assistant, midwife slash like doula. And like we texted her and I was like, I think my water just maybe broke. Like Justin just told me to text you. And I see her looking down the phone. She's like, okay, like let us know if anything happens, but just get rest. Justin like is the kind of person immediately he's like, we're not watching this anymore. They're gonna be a part of our postpartum. Like it does not matter. There are midwives. So he like told them we're getting off of this Zoom and he set up the tub. He was like, you go relax. He ended up calling my sister, telling her to come over because she lived like 20 minutes away. And nothing ended up happening that night. And I told Justin, I was like, I have no cramps. I don't feel anything. So we just went to bed. And at like 3 a.m., I started to, like, I had my first like cramp, or it was like almost 4. And I was like, man, this might be it. Who knows? Like, my water did officially break. So I was like aware. And I kind of had not really slept well. When they tell you to sleep, like, I really tried, but I was like, there's a chance I might be making my baby soon. So I was really excited. So yeah, my contractions were like decently apart. And I was like, I'm not gonna wake Justin up yet. At around like 5:30, I woke Justin up because my midwife was like, okay, they're getting close enough apart. Like we'll probably head over soonish. Because I just like would screenshot the contraction app. And Justin like got everything ready. We woke up my sister a little bit into it, and she was kind of like my doula for me. Like she's got some strong hands, was giving me like a good back massage and everything, but everything was very, I didn't like look up the hypnobirthing stuff. I didn't like really, I just knew I had to be in control of my breath, which I think up to that point we were free diving a lot still, like not super deep, but we were spending a lot of time in the water. So I was like pretty good at like really being in tune with my breath. And yeah, and everything stayed super calm and mellow. I was able to like still talk through all my contractions. I just sat on the couch for a while this time and would just kind of lean over and just like I liked to move a lot through my contractions. And then I told my sister, I was like, I think I like didn't disassociate, but like in your first birth, I felt like some parts I do not remember because they either happened so fast or I was just like, you're so in the moment that I didn't remember. My sister did a good job of like videotaping and documenting portions of it, but I just remember throwing up, and now I'm aware. I'm like, that's usually sometimes when you transition, which happened pretty fast. And my midwife, one cool thing she does is like she won't. I probably could tell her like I really want to get in the tub, but she's the kind of person that's like, I'll tell you when I think you're like ready. Which I think I didn't even remember her telling me that, but when she told me eventually to get into the tub, I was like, oh my gosh, it's time. And how does she know this? I was like, are you reading my, like, can you see in my body? Because I know a lot of midwives can do cervical checks too, but we've never done cervical checks. She just knows. And now I'm aware of like the sounds you make are leading you into different parts of your labor. So I ended up staying on the couch for a while. We went into the shower after I threw up for like two two contractions, I think, and I was just leaning over Justin, and I was really wanting Justin to be like a part of all of it, and he was amazing. Like he didn't I made him watch like one birth video, so he like knew what to kind of expect, but he was like so amazing. And then right after those contractions, my midwife was like, "We're gonna get into the tub, like it's time," and we got into the tub, and I think about an hour I was in the tub before I gave birth to her. So my whole labor was 6 hours, and we I was in Justin's legs. So I ended up being kind of like sitting like on my back, leaning is what felt the most comfortable this time, which is crazy. Both labors were just so different. This time I just like was leaning all my body weight. It was in Justin's lap. I wanted him to be able to be the person to like bring her up onto my chest. And it was just, I think like that feeling like, oh my gosh, there's a baby inside of me. Like overwhelming in a sense. Like even Justin said this time I was like a lot more like I got back into myself after pushing the baby out faster than the first time because I think I was just so in shock the first time. Like, oh, the baby just came out of me, and like we knew her name already, so I was like, oh my gosh, hi Rava, like I love you, and just like hugging and kissing her. And it was just so peaceful being in the tub and like worship music playing and so surreal. And it was just like everything I had hoped and dreamed to have. And somebody always told me like don't be afraid to ask God for your very specific prayers. So yeah, everything I had been very specific about, like even the time of day, I was like, I feel like I'd want to give birth in the morning and like watch the sunrise, and it just being so intimate with just my sister there and seeing this baby come to life, like everything, even with my dad, like I felt like in my head, I remember thinking like, I did it, Dad. Like that was crazy. And also like, thank you God for bringing me through the whole thing. Yeah, it was beautiful, and I loved every second of that birth. And if this one was the same, I would have been totally, totally happy with them being copy and paste. So it was beautiful.
Wow. Oh, that sounds so incredible. And the name Rava, where did that come from?
Her full name is Poirava, which means rare pearl in Tahitian, or like black pearl, which is like rare pearl. So we just call her Rava for short because it's kind of hard to roll the R's for some people. Because my husband and I met in Tahiti, and he like dove for my pearl ring. So it was kind of like our storyline was like her being our little rare pearl.
Oh, that is so beautiful. Wow. How special. How incredible. What an amazing story. And what was postpartum like with Rava?
It was super, super mellow. I mean, I don't think I expected a lot of things. Like, I knew you're like gonna bleed, like, you prep for all the things, but like I didn't tear at all, which is cool. I think I got like little, uh,
Skid.
yeah, that's actually a good word for it. I would call them like little paper cuts.
Oh, that's good.
And
Yeah, that's true.
got like tiny little like scratches, which I never really noticed because I kind of stayed bed rested for a
Hmm.
while and just around the house. I think midwives are so amazing. Like that they care for you in the postpartum. Like almost, I think their worth is most beneficial after, because they're coming to you 24 hours after, then at like the 5 to 7 day mark, and then like the following week. And now I think I'm even at, I don't see my midwife this week, but I see her when I'm 4 weeks postpartum, and them just being there for like all your questions, just to text her like, hey, like, can I take this? Or would you suggest doing this? And they just, everything's catered to you, like very specifically. And after spending 9 months with somebody, then, and they really get to know you so well, because most appointments are like 1 to 2 hours long, at least they were for us. It was just so centered around that. So I think the postpartum was amazing. And Justin was like so a part of it. I'm like, if you think you chose the right person, just choose like who you want to see you in diapers, and like be willing to help change you out of those diapers the first 2 days, when you're like so kind of like, you're not like weak, but you just feel like frail, and like everything's, your organs are feeling shifted, and you are in a diaper.
Mhm.
Breastfeeding your baby with sore nipples. I just think it was really cool to have Justin be like so involved in it, to where like the second time around, even it was so like, oh yeah, we've done this before, like I'm gonna do this for you. Justin was changing diapers, burping in the middle of the night. Just a really good team switch off effort. It feels a little crazy. I think the first time we were like, oh my gosh, we have a baby. But being born in the morning versus night was really nice, I think, for me, because I had that whole day before I had to go to sleep, to where it can kind of sink in a little bit more, if
Wow,
that
that's
makes
a good
sense.
point. I like that. Yeah, that's a really sweet way to look at it. Okay, so this first birth experience was truly beautiful and goodness gracious, yep, 6 hours first birth. That's a little quick one.
Yeah.
So, how were you guys feeling when you decided to become pregnant for the second time?
I remember we were actually in Europe, visiting my family. And I remember telling Justin, I think we were like, I think Rafa was like 9 months old. I was like, okay, I'm ready. But like my period hadn't started yet, which I was like, maybe I'll be one of the people that gets pregnant before your period start, like, or you just don't know and it could start. I wasn't really aware of trying to conceive after having a baby, because your hormones are obviously still normalizing, and I was breastfeeding exclusively, which is a whole part of the middle journey of both pregnancies. So like at 9 months, I was like ready. Obviously, God had other plans. I needed to go through some things. Um, so we ended up not even getting pregnant till the month before Rava turned 2. So that was like almost a year, a little over a year of like trying, but like at this point, yeah, like my period hadn't started. So like I wasn't like, when we'd try around when my body kind of would show peaks of maybe ovulating, I was like, it's not like I was defeated when I'd see like my period start every time. Towards the end, I kind of would, because I was like, okay, when my period started about a year and 3 months after um, Rava was born, and I was like, cool, let's try immediately. Like, we'll get pregnant this time, because I was like, if we got pregnant without trying the first time, it should be easy, which it was not.
Mm,
And yeah, like I felt sort of defeated. I was like, is something wrong with my body?
mm,
Turns out I just had to stop breastfeeding, because it is a contraceptive, at least for me. So I started knocking off morning feeds. Started, and then the next, if my period would start, stopped doing middle of the day feeds. And it was a really cool way to like transition Rava out of breastfeeding, which was also super hard. Like I was more sad than she was, because I probably would have kept going for like a while. And then Justin came up to me really sweetly. He's like, babe, I think like every time your period starts, if you really want to get pregnant, like you've just got to like cold turkey, like stop breastfeeding. So we made the decision when my period started to have like one really intentional night of like, this is my last night that I'm going to put her to bed. And then we still didn't get pregnant after that. Ended up going to Europe. And I was like, I'm not going to look at those ovulation test strips. I'm going to take my aura ring off. I am not tracking anything, which ended up working. And I did get pregnant when we were in Europe. And I think it was like around Justin's birthday too. We were like with all our friends. But I did miscarry that pregnancy. And I was like,
Mm.
okay, something has to be off. And it was really hard miscarrying because I think you go through such a high peak of I'm so excited I finally am pregnant. Like my body didn't fail me. And I know my body's never failing me, but like also I think sometimes you miscarry for your body to like protect itself, or it might have not been a viable pregnancy. And that was at least my outlook on it. Like my body's going to be able, like it wouldn't miscarry if it wasn't going to be like maybe the healthiest pregnancy, or maybe the baby wouldn't have been like viable, or like my body, I just trusted my body, like my body knows. And at that point I started going to acupuncture, and my acupuncturist worked with me a lot. I went to her every other week just to deal with like the week of ovulation, and then whether or not my period start or I would get pregnant around my cycle. And we took some like herbs to just like warm my womb and just like stay very like centered and calm, and I could feel the change in my hormones balancing. And even on my aura ring, it was really cool to see my temperature like fully drop. Like every time it would, every cycle from the time I started breastfeeding, even through the miscarriage, because I was doing acupuncture, it was my miscarriage didn't take long for my body to like get back on a normal cycle, which I think was really helpful. And yeah, I ended up having one cycle in between the miscarriage where I was just like, I'm gonna reset my body and just stay really like calm and nourishing my body still. And then I got pregnant the next month, and it was super cool too because I think my sister got called us. She told us she was pregnant, and I think I got pregnant that week, or I ovulated that week, because when we like looked back onto it, I was like, I think I had to fully surrender my want of getting pregnant to be like, oh, if my sister's pregnant, that's all I care about. Like I want to be there for her. I do not care about myself. And I think it was my full surrender moment. And then I got pregnant myself, which was like my dream to be at least one of my pregnancies pregnant with my baby sister.
Oh, that is so sweet. Was that her first pregnancy or had she already
Yeah.
had children?
Yeah, it was her first pregnancy. And she and her husband didn't want to have, they were like, oh, we're going to wait like 5 years. And they'd only been married. This was their second year anniversary this year. So I was like, dang, I might be done having kids by then. I was like, we'll never have, like, our kids are going to be far apart. And I was so excited when they were like, oh no, we're pregnant. And like, we actually like do want kids earlier. Thank you, Jesus.
It's because Rava was just so adorable. They couldn't help themselves.
No, I was like, yeah, you guys knew she needed a friend. Can't just be me making them.
That's right. Wow. Okay. So you become pregnant. You've been doing acupuncture, balancing things. You become pregnant. And what was this pregnancy like compared to that the first pregnancy?
At this point, I had also started eating meat. Yeah, I'd been eating meat for like a while, but very intentional. Like the farm we kind of live on sells the cows that are in our backyard. So we eat a lot of like that beef, and just being really intentional. So I was curious of how I think my protein intake was always good being like vegan and vegetarian because I was very conscious of it. Like I wasn't a vegan or vegetarian that was eating like Beyond Burgers like every once in a while, but I wasn't eating high processed stuff to begin with. But this time I was like, I wonder how my diet is going to change like my placenta. I was really excited to see how my placenta was going to come out differently, or if I was going to have a bigger baby, or if I would like have a bigger bump second time, like if I was going to show more. I think because I had a full 2 years to like recover from my first pregnancy, I think it was like so identical. Like I didn't really show for the first couple months. And I was like, dang it, like it's kind of fun to just like be pregnant and feel pregnant earlier on. But this pregnancy, I was sick again in the mornings. And I think when you have a toddler, it's harder.
I would say so.
Yeah, I was sick with Rafa, but I was like, wow, this is not for the weak to be sick and have to take care of a kid that wants so much of your attention. Because at this point, she was like, just had turned to you. And she's like very, very vocal. And thankfully, Justin was like a huge help. And he like took her out a lot in the mornings. And like, I spent a lot of time like in our room and like she would come and like play with me. I'd do like bed activities with her, which was kind of nice because that's what I'm doing like now postpartum too. Or I did like the first week really with her. So yeah, that I think was like the only like really hard part of the pregnancy was just being sick and like not I'm not a thrower upper, but just feeling like I don't have the energy to do anything. And my sister was a couple weeks ahead of me too. So once she got into the light of the second trimester, she was like, I'm so excited. You have like 2 more weeks. Like, you got it, which is really fun. I ended up I think I found out that I was even pregnant, like after having my first weekend away to California. And I was just with my sister and we were having like a fun trip together. And when I found out, I was like, yeah, it's such a transition, like having like a kid already, like being like so I've sometimes felt guilty having the thought of like wanting to be pregnant almost. Like I don't know how to articulate that super well. But you know, like you have your first and like they're happy and healthy and perfect, but I was like so wanting the second pregnancy to when it was there, I was like, okay, it's here, like this is my time. And then going into the second trimester, so much energy. Like I was counting down the days that I knew I would just have with Rava. So I really made like the most of it count. And we had a really cool time, I think, this pregnancy. Like we traveled so much when I was pregnant with Rava to like Tahiti. We went to Europe. We did like so many things that this time we kind of felt like I just want to be home and really make our home ours even more. And yeah, we spent so much time here in Hawaii and just like as a family because we're like we're not just going to have one baby ever again. So I think this whole pregnancy went by way too fast because 9 months is really, really so short, especially when you have a kid.
That is so true.
Yeah. I was like, 9 months is like nothing. It's really crazy.
Wow. So you enjoyed this pregnancy a lot. Mm.
Like every little kick, I think I was so aware of like as soon as she started moving, like I knew so much of what was happening with my body and I knew what to prepare for and think of while also being pretty like I'm type A but also type B of like preparing for things, but I was like you don't really need anything. So like going into like the third trimester, I was just so focused on like what do I need to do for my sister?
Mm.
And they ended up moving in with us in the third trimester because they are moving into the house next door to us in a month. So we're like, just live in our house, have your baby, and then your house will be done in like some time frame. Like we didn't know the time frame, but I think I was just like so focused on her, and I think that's how God had planned for our whole pregnancy to be anyways for me to get pregnant at that time to where like me surrendering even that want for my pregnancy I ended up getting pregnancy but also surrendering a lot of like myself during my pregnancy to like being there for her as an older sister who's like already been through it.
Wow. And how did that go? So did she have her baby at home as well, or did she go somewhere else?
We had the same midwife, which was
Okay.
awesome. Like every because we're so close with our midwife, every single appointment, we didn't even have to go to her office. She just came to ours because she's like, I'm just going to double them up. It's easier if I come to you. And she's like, I want to see Rava. So we did them here. Sadly, my sister ended up losing her baby,
Oh
um,
no.
which was another huge thing to go through at like a month before I gave birth, because I dealt with grief and loss the first month of my pregnancy with Rava, and now I was dealing with it at the end. She had a beautiful birth and it was at home. And then there was just like things afterwards that she wasn't viable enough
Mm,
and had to be, we brought her to the NICU. My sister healed so greatly. And I'm like, so being in the postpartum stage now, I'm just so thankful that like we had midwife care as opposed to like how I think she would have been treated like in a hospital in that situation. But her baby was born in 4 hours and she got to have a home birth. And it was just such a sweet thing to have that we knew she got to like be home before she passed away, which was 3 days after she was born. So that was a huge thing also that we got to see life and death at the same time. And just it made my perspective of like being able to be the stewards of bringing life into this world. Like it is so fragile, even having like a miscarriage or, yeah, like giving birth. There's so much that can happen. And it really is such a blessing when you have a happy and healthy baby brought into this world. So, a lot of the end of my pregnancy, I honestly forgot that I was pregnant.
mhm,
And my midwife and Justin and my sister's husband had to remind me, like, you're pregnant. But I was doing like everything I can for my sister, like laundry, helping her on her like pumping schedule, making sure she had food, like taking care of her, like and being in the same house, I think was like a huge blessing that like we couldn't have even like guessed in the beginning, like
yeah.
why they might have moved in. And I really think it was for that reason to be like so close. So that was a really tough season, I think, to see a little baby and the day, yeah, we like saw her go to heaven, I think was just for it to be like a perfect little baby that she was so healthy and well and looked just like my girls was super hard. And just being a bigger sister, wishing I had that really hard time being like, I'm pregnant and I'm about to go through the same thing. And I felt that guilt of like, if I go through my pregnancy and labor, like having like the healthy baby, that's like I almost had that guilt for that. And Jacob and Nikki reiterated so much that like they were so excited to meet Taya and for her to be there. So I think, yeah, it's been interesting getting to see grief
Mhm.
and loss through pregnancy both times,
Yeah.
life being
Wow.
taken and given. And it's just so fragile and life is like so beautiful. But God really had his hand over their lives, our lives, and like the peace around our family with losing baby Joe and just seeing like the community around us like during that time. And even like just having midwives that were like so good during that time.
Mhm.
Like, again, the postpartum, whether or not you end up having like, because you don't really think like it will ever happen to you either. And I think in a world where we have social media, we see more things than like you hear more about like stillbirths or you hear more about infant like loss. And I think sometimes like you see it and you're like, oh, that will never happen to me, like it happened to that person. I think having it happen, you just like, yeah, realize like life is so delicate. As like, and having like healthy babies, it makes me so much more like, when I gave birth to her, I just like could not stop crying because it like the fact that I heard her cry immediately and just know she was like good and strong. It was like that's all you can like hope for.
Wow. Oh
So
man.
yeah.
Ivana, just thinking back about what you said in terms of that's it seems like maybe that's even why she and her husband were here with you, and how that makes so much sense in terms of this grieving process. Number 1, you have this shared experience of loss prior. So the two of you know what grief is. You, as someone supporting your sister, knows that depthy feeling of grief. And so for you to be able to provide a loving place to land and to be able to grieve together, I can't imagine how helpful that would be in such a heart-wrenching time. It really is incredible that the Lord put you guys together in such a way.
Yeah, and just like being, I mean, like we're a year and a half apart too, and we're
Mm,
like my sister is my best friend. So I
right.
think, yeah, having that and just I at the end of the day I was just so happy that she was like healthy and happy too.
Mm,
And then on the other hand too, them being just so encouraging of like we've never been more positively influenced. Like I think for some people you'd be like, oh, we had a home birth, maybe like you would be scared like to have another home birth if you
mhm,
want to. And it wasn't because it was at home or
mhm,
at a hospital. There were other outlying things. But I think for me to be encouraged by them of like, we are so happy or and excited for you. I think when you, yeah, you just look at it and think of like, as long as you have your health, your family, and God, like that's all that really matters
wow.
in this life. I think that was the perspective shift for me this time. And then like being postpartum now too, I'm like, this is what matters
Mm,
the
yeah.
most. And being able to be so close to like God, I think when you are pregnant is like it feels like you're the close like and giving birth feels like you're like the closest in the thin veil of like life bringing babies into this world. It's just so cool to experience whether or not your baby is like happy and healthy or like you do go through like infant loss. And I actually it was really cool during this time like seeing having other people reach out to me who've had like similar things like even with their siblings of like being pregnant around the same time. And I think God was so cool at protecting my sister and her husband and them just being even more happy to bring more babies into this world
Mm,
eventually, and that it is such a miracle to have babies, and that it's not something that should just be overlooked because it is just so crazy that everything can work together perfectly to make these little humans.
mm. Oh my goodness. Yeah. Oh, that's so amazing. So this happens a couple of weeks before you are giving birth yourself. What were those? I know you said that really those last few weeks, it almost was, you weren't even focusing on pregnancy. You're focusing on helping support grief and healing. But as your pregnancy did come to a conclusion, as labor was coming closer, what was that like, and how did labor unfold?
Yeah, the end, I think for the first couple weeks, I kind of put a halt on like I was really good with my like stretching and being active, but I took a halt for a little bit and then the last like leading weeks I was like, okay, I need to get back into it. Like my sister was like, Ivana, you still need to like take care of yourself. Like and Taya, even my midwife is like, I want to see you put on 2 pounds. So she's like, get that protein in, like eat a little bit more. Just because when you're in that state, I was like, I don't like even feel like it. But yeah, towards the end, I still got in a really good routine of like, okay, I'm gonna listen. Like I listened to your podcast every time I got in the car. It was just like myself driving. I was like, this is my me time. I gotta listen to some like good stories. I think you had like a couple even about people who had gone through like loss too, or like a few different. I was like specifically like listening to some that like I knew I needed to hear, and just like encouraging myself with like positive stories, and because I also didn't know if that those emotions would come out during labor. And my prayers this time were like I wanted to have a very present, like that's the since the beginning of this pregnancy, I told my midwife, I was like, I just want to be very present during my labor. And I don't know like how to describe that. I was like, I want to be like, if Rava came in the room, I want to be able to like talk to her and be there. So towards the end, I just like really honed in on that emotional state because I think so much of you can work out a bunch and be super healthy. And I'm really glad I spent a lot of time on like breath work and like core, like deep core exercising. I think was a shift in this pregnancy just to feel like strong postpartum. But other than that, I was like mentally, this has always been a mental game for me, whether it was the first pregnancy and having to like deal with the emotions of my dad or this second one and it being with my niece. And I I think that's where yeah, birth is such an emotional mental game and like your interconnectedness like with yourself, like how you talk to yourself.
Mm.
So I was like, okay, I'm gonna like spend so much time on that. And God really answered his prayers. I think he knew exactly how my birth needed to be for me to A, remember it all, because I wanted to be able to remember every single detail and I wanted to be really present. So we ended up like my sister flew back from California and they were at the house and my friend and my sister-in-law came over and Rava had gone down for a nap. Justin and I at this point being I was like 40 weeks. So like at this point I was like, we need to have sexy time every day because what gets the baby in is what gets the baby out. Like all the things like the mile circuit I had seen stuff of, but I was like, honestly, my midwife was like, what makes the baby is what encourages the baby to get out. And I really do think that is like the way to induce labor. So we put Rava down for a nap, did that. And then when she woke up, the UV was like 10 and it was so sunny. And we are like, we're going to go to the beach for the rest of the evening. Perfect day. At this point, I was like, she's going to come when she's going to come. I'm not a stressor over like when the babies are going to be due or not. And my sister was leaving in 2 days though. So I was like, it would
Mm.
be kind of nice if she came while my sister's here. I feel like that. I really want them to be there and meet her. So we went to the beach and there's like a river by our house that goes into the ocean and we love like playing in it and like jumping off into it. So we brought our like big speaker. We brought smoothies down to the beach. Like it was a full family beach day. And I still had not lost my mucus plug. Water hadn't broke. Like zero signs, like not even consistent Braxton Hicks, like zero anything. And I was like, oh, my body gave birth. Like that's how I gave birth the first time. So like I'd assume it would happen like that. And like that's how my sister's labor started was the same that my first one started. So I was like, oh, well, I guess she's not coming for a few days then. And we get to the beach and we end up seeing my neighbor and we started talking to her and there was like 1 second where like I felt a Braxton Hicks or like a cramp and it kind of like didn't take my breath away, but I was like had to take a deep breath. And I was like, oh, okay. Like I didn't think anything of it though, because I like I said, I'm an in denial laborer. Um, then I go over to my sister and my sister-in-law and I was like, okay, pull up this app while the boys are all like opening up the river and digging holes. I was like, can you just like count, like track these for me? And I had two back to back, like 4 minutes apart. And they were a minute long, like 51 seconds long. And I was like, okay. But I just started playing in the river with Rava and like we're jumping. My friend Jay like starts grabbing my hand. He's like, let's work this baby out. So we started like doing jumping jacks and deep squatting, like super high energy. Like nothing was like taking me away from like the fact that I might be in labor. And then Sienna walks over to my husband and was like, I think Ivana's having contractions, maybe. I just thought I'd let you know. Like, we just counted two of them. And Justin, like, comes over and he's like, you're having contractions? And I was like, no, babe, the UV, like, it's such nice weather. Like, we shouldn't leave the beach. Because Justin was like, pack everything and we're going to walk home. And I was like, oh, seriously? Like, it is the nicest day ever. Thankfully, we listened to him. So he made us all leave. Justin was like, everyone's going to play with Rava. You go take a really nice shower. While I was showering, he set up the whole tub, like, set up everything. He texts like our midwives for me. And I had I had more contractions while I was in the shower. I put my really nice PJs on, like my cozies, and then I put my earphones in and I was like, I'm gonna listen to a worship song, and I just ended up listening to that same song on repeat
Hmm.
pretty much the whole time. And I texted my midwife. She's like, I'm gonna FaceTime you and I'm gonna see like how you sound. And they were actually together at an event, and I FaceTimed her and I was like, okay, one's coming. I'm gonna go through it. She's like, okay, we're coming over. She's like, we're gonna text you our ETA. At this point, like at the beach, it was like 4:50. So we get home, and by the time I showered, it was like 5:15, 5:20, and their ETA was like 6:10. And then I was like unable because my water hadn't broken, like nothing. I was like unable to be in any other position but standing up, leaning over my dresser and like swaying back and forth because it was such a heavy feeling with the water bag intact. It was like a bowling ball just on my pelvic bone compared to when it's like broken. And it was really sweet, like watching Rava play outside of the window in the yard with like my sister, her husband, and like our friends. And I was so thankful. Like, I didn't plan for our friends to be there. I planned for my sister to be there with her husband, but not our friends. And I'm so glad they were there. And Rava came in, and me, Justin, and her all prayed together because Justin was the one that knew it was going to happen fast. And it was really cool. Jacob, my brother-in-law, when you're leaving the beach, he's like, I don't know why, but God's telling me like 6:40. And I was like, you mean as in the time I'm going to give birth in like an hour and a half? And he's like, I don't know. That's the time that's in my head.
I'm telling you what I'm hearing. That's all.
Okay. And then we end up, like, my midwife is like texting Justin. I didn't see these until after, obviously, in our group chat, but texting Justin, grab the clamps, grab the rounded scissors, put the heating pad out, because with Ivana's birthing, like, we know that like as soon as this water bag breaks, like that baby will be out. So like my midwives got here, they ran into our room. They were in like fancy attire for like the event they were at. They like put on their like birthing clothes, like getting ready. She had me walk out. They like checked me for like all my vitals and everything. And then she's like, I'm gonna have you stand up for one instead of like hunching over and swaying. She's like, I want you to come out by the pool, stand up, and put the sarong or pareo under my belly, and then have it over my shoulders. And she's like, Justin's gonna stand behind you and pull down on it. So like lift your belly. And that, I guess that's an acupressure point to like enhance labor. And then also like once you lift baby up, then they can drop more into your pelvic bone. And I did two contractions like that, and immediately Justin had videotaped because he's now knowledgeable in birth. Right before they got there, he sent a video of how I was sounding, and my breathing was already getting into a little bit moany, like more of that
Mhm.
and when they got here, as soon as she did that thing with the pareo, I immediately started bearing, like, my body just like went straight into it. And she's like, okay, I'm gonna make you go to the bathroom in between this contraction just to relieve any extra stuff that you have in your body before you get into the pool. She immediately made me go in the pool. I wanted to be in control of this like labor and be the one like with my hand like down there like feeling everything. I wanted to be like more in control, so she was guiding me through that, which was really cool. And I was feeling like where her head was, and I was kind of giving myself that counter pressure. And I wanted Rava to be a part of it. So I was in there. I had one, my body kind of pushed for one contraction. And then I think I think I maybe had two. And then my midwife was like, Justin, go get Rava right now. And Justin ran to her bedroom, grabbed Rava, and they sat like behind me. And I was on all fours this time, which I think was way way easier giving birth because you just can really let your body do what it's supposed to do. It felt like very releasing. And Justin grabbed Rava, and literally the next contraction I had, I was like, I told her, I was like, okay, I'm gonna push with my body now because I was already feeling like my body do it, but I was kind of like not going with it. And I was like, okay, I'm gonna do it with this one. And in one push, her whole body just came out.
Oh.
I'm like in the video, because like we didn't have anything set up because it happened so fast. I like had a tripod with like a camera, but like in that time of an hour and a half, I had no way of like telling Justin, like, can you set this up? So it was just on an iPhone, and Justin was like behind me watching Taya come out with Rava, and Rava was like, oh, did did baby Taya come out of mommy's ching ching? Because that's what she calls it. And like getting her to watch it was the coolest way to introduce a sibling, I think, because so many people were like, okay, like for hospital births, like make sure you're not holding the newborn and make them be like next to you so that your firstborn doesn't think you're like leaving them for the baby. Like there was all these things I heard of like, so there's no resentment there. But Rava watching it, she's like, oh baby Taya, and immediately asked if she could hold her. And she like ran over to the tub and like asked to get in or like hold her hand. And I just like snapped so fast into the realm of like, oh my gosh, she's here. Instead of being like, oh my gosh, a baby. This time I was like just so aware of like talking to her. And it was obviously this time was very emotional after. I just was like crying the whole first time. Like even in the video, I looked back when I rewatched it. My midwife came behind me and like kissed me on the head while I was kissing her. And I think like above all else, like that relationship like with our midwives is just so special. So it was just so peaceful. And my sister and her husband were in the kitchen, which we have a very open concept house. And my sister and her husband were like the wall over, like together when she was born and hearing her cry. And they got to be the first ones to like meet her. And it was amazing. My friends or my sister in law and friend who were there were amazing help. Took down the pool, put everything away, house was cleaned. Our friend that was there like gave me leg massages while I was getting like a little crampy afterwards. And just being home at the middle of the evening, Rava got to go straight to bed after because she had already eaten dinner, watched her baby sister be born, went to bed.
Call it a day.
Yeah, I was like, perfect. Now we get to have time with baby. Everybody's here. The house is like really cozy. And it just felt very like peaceful and healing. It was like the whole birth.
And what time was it?
It was at 6:47 because it
Wow.
got to 6:40 and Mari's like, oh, she's like, oh, Jacob, I I don't know if you're gonna make it. Like, cause we all joked, we're like, if that happened, that'd be crazy. And then it ended up being 6:47, and we all looked at Jacob like, whoa.
That counts.
Yeah, when I was having contractions, I was like, there's no way that it would be that fast. Which like makes me scared for the third one. I'm like, am I just gonna like boom,
Boop.
baby out of me? And like second time around, my pelvic bone, or my everything down there already felt like looser, or like it was more prepared to give birth than the first time, like
Mhm.
not just from stretching and working out, but like I think because it has already been through that, so I could feel my body starting to release the last couple weeks. And she really just came out.
She was just there. First she wasn't, then she was.
Yeah,
That's
they're just
amazing.
like that really, like we went from having, the way I described this birth was like how people, it's like a very nostalgic summer feeling of like when you have a beach day and you're sun kissed, you take a really nice shower, and then you go to dinner with your family. Except instead of dinner, I gave birth, and I was like, my hair was clean, like I had showered, and my skin was like warm and crispy. I was like, this is a great way to give birth. It was amazing.
Oh my gosh, recommended.
Uh,
Totally recommended.
yeah.
Oh wow, Ivana, this is incredible. And so Taya's name, what is this one? What does this mean?
Her first name is Teanuanua, which is also Tahitian, because we're like, okay, well, we're just not going to flip flop them in between like Hawaiian and Tahitian names. And it means rainbow, but her middle name, which is also very long, it pretty much means like God's perfect promise, like being the rainbow, which Justin is actually the one that came up with that name. And
Oh.
he didn't ever know the term like rainbow baby,
Mhm.
but it just perfectly was like along with our storyline. And I started crying when he told me like what the name meant, because I was like, oh, Taya's cute, but like, what does it mean? So that's her name. And it's cool because the Sunday she was born was actually Pentecost Sunday, which I didn't even really know what that meant. But yeah, it's like God fulfilling his promise,
Mhm.
which I was like, oh my gosh, that's like her name means. And it was 49 days after Easter, and her everything that happened with my niece was on the week of Easter. So we just thought that was really like
Whoa.
a cool, yeah, translation into that. Everything was like so detailed, even 24 hours after when my midwife came and they brought back like what her blood type is. We always like guess. She's like, okay, everyone make your guesses of like what her blood type's going to be. And you get like, she makes a homemade jam. She's like, whoever gets it right gets the homemade jam. And it's like a 75% chance that she would have been mine, 25 20% chance that she would have been Justin's blood type, and like five, I think even it might have been like less than 5% that she would have been my sister's, and she ended up being my sister's blood type, which we just
Wow.
think was such a so many little like snippets of just like it could only be like God
Mhm.
really
Yeah.
designing all these things. So
Mm.
we just like that day we were just like, oh, really? So her
Wow.
name is just so special for so many things.
So many reasons. So many reasons. It's just gosh, what a beautiful story of redemption in sadness, and to be able to all come together and just love this baby and see her as God's promise is just so beautiful. Ivana, this has been so special. What a beautiful and difficult, hard parts of your journey. But once again, here we are at the end, just praising and celebrating God's promises. It's been such an honor. Thank you so much for coming on the Happy Home Birth podcast.
Thank you. I'm so happy. I haven't like really shared my birth story yet. So you're like kind of the first person
Well,
besides
I'm honored.
her. Yeah.
I'm honored, and I can't wait for everyone to hear it. Thank you so much.
Yay. So excited.
My goodness, what a story. As we head into today's episode roundup, I want to focus on several aspects of what we heard. Number one, Ivana's first pregnancy began by greeting new life while also saying goodbye to one of the most important figures of her life. This tension is overwhelming, and the grief of this was so heavy. What I'm so happy to hear is the way that Ivana's community surrounded her. Her husband, Justin, who is familiar with loss himself, along with Ivana's midwife, who stepped in as a support figure, both made sure that she was processing her grief in a meaningful way, not allowing the pain to take her as a fearful captive. It is so clear that this made a massive impact on how Ivana was able to experience the rest of her pregnancy, along with her beautiful first birth. When grief struck her family again during her sister's birth, the same support system came alongside to offer the care that was so desperately needed. What a picture of what it means to live in community and to receive the comfort and love that is so desperately needed in times of such deep pain. Next, keep in mind that each birthing experience is its own. It's easy to assume that our births will follow a specific pattern or that they will look and feel similarly to a previous experience. But as Ivana mentioned in this episode, her first birth and her second birth began quite differently, which did add to the experience of labor denial. Ivana thought that her second birth would involve losing her mucus plug over the course of several days and having her water break just like it did with her first. But the second birth followed its own pattern and blueprint. The beauty is that Ivana was able to very comfortably flow with the birth that presented itself, which allowed her to absorb every little moment of her rather short labor. Finally, I want to end with a name: Taya, God's promise. We aren't promised that everything in life will go exactly how we want it to go. And this is so clear throughout the stories that Ivana shared today. But there's one thing that Ivana stands firm on. We are promised that God will be there, that He will show up with and for us, and we will not walk any of it alone. Sweet baby Taya, a rainbow baby after a tumultuous storm. What a gift. Okay, my friends, what a beautiful, richly woven tapestry of a story. That's all I've got for you for today. I'll see you back here next week. Thanks for listening to this week's episode. Are you looking to extend the home birth support, encouragement, and education? Join us in our Facebook group, Happy Home Birth Podcast Community, and check us out on Instagram at Happy Home Birth Podcast.